Hey guys, it's me, Miss Smith. Welcome back. So today I'm going to be going over the genetics practice sheet assignment. Okay, so here we go. So I'm not going to go over modern genetics because it's just a critical reading assignment. And if you want to know how to do that, remember there's a link that you can watch on how to digitally mark the text. Okay, so I'm going over genetics practice sheet. Okay, so here is the assignment, and then here's my copy of the assignment. Okay, so here is the paper. Here is the sort of like the definitions. So if you did the critical reading first, this will make a lot more sense on how to do it. Okay, if you didn't do the critical reading, I would highly suggest doing that first before you start this practice sheet. Okay, so here we go. So here is just some tidbits. So uppercase, right? If we have an uppercase letter, that means it's going to be known as dominant. Okay, so we'll just have dominant. Right, dominant is going to be uppercase. Okay, so this is expressed this time as an A, capital A. Okay, and what that word expressed means. All right, I'm going to do something a little different. Here we go. To make my life a lot easier. So if it's dominant, that means it's a capital A, right? Capital letter, right? So if it's 1, that means it's always expressed, okay? Expressed just means that we can see that trait, right? And this trait could be, in this case, dimples, right? So if there is an uppercase A, then that means that person is going to have dimples no matter what. All right. So if we have recessive, that means it's going to be a little a, at least in this case, or lowercase. Okay. Now, right here where it says expressed, only when two lowercases are together. So for example, if we had little a, then that person is not going to have dimples. Think of recessive as it's the opposite of dominant, okay? So expressed, we see that trait. So for dominant, we only need one letter, one capital letter to be expressed. And again, the word expressed just means that we see that trait. Okay? We see the trait. So for example, if it's capital A, or capital A, little a, that means that they're going to have dimples. They will have dimples. Okay, that's all that this information here on the practice sheet means. And if you already know how to do this, then this video isn't really for you. But if you just need help, right, this video is here. This is for you guys. So if you want to stick around, let's continue on. Okay, so that's what it means. We have dominant, okay, and recessive. That's just uppercase, lowercase. If we have at least one dominant, that means we are going to see it. If we have one capital letter, if we have one uppercase, we will see that trait. For recessive, we need to have 2, okay? We need both to be lowercase. in order to be expressed. And again, the word express just means that we see that trait. Okay? So the next part is, so let's take this information. Okay, let's take this information and apply it to section A and B. Okay, so let's do this first. Okay, so identify whether the allele is dominant, meaning uppercase or bigger letter, or recessive. So if it is a dominant, if it is uppercase, we're going to use the letter D. If it is lowercase or a little letter or recessive, we're going to use R for recessive. So let's apply this. Let's apply this practice, okay? So we have a capital letter. Take a second. What do you think is going to go there? 3, 2, and 1. If you guessed that it was dominant, you are correct, okay? So I'm going to go ahead, again, in a different color if we're doing this digitally, and I'm going to put the letter D here. That's what it is because we have an uppercase B, and uppercase is for dominant, okay? Now, here we have a lowercase b. So I'm going to give you 3 seconds to think about what do you think is going to go here. 3, 2, 1. Okay, if you guess that the letter R is going to go here, you would be correct. Okay, and again, I want to do this in a different color so that way whoever is grading it can see your answer clearly. All right, everything else, you're good to go. 3, 4, 5, 6, you're good to go. Let's move on to section B. All right, this time we have, now it's asking for the 2 letters at the same time, and we still need to determine if this allele, if these combined alleles, right, the letters stand for allele, if they are either dominant or recessive, okay? So let's look at number 1. So we have a capital letter and a capital letter. Well, if we look back at our notes, right, dominant means that we only need, I spelled need wrong, that's embarrassing. We only need one letter, we only need one capital letter to be expressed, meaning we only need one of it to see it. So here we definitely have one, we have 2 for sure. So if it's 2, for sure, if they're both uppercase, we know darn well then that it is going to be a dominant allele. And again, always a different color for our answer. Okay, number 2. So here we have little a and little a, okay? So is it going to be dominant or recessive? Well, if we go back to our notes over here, right, let's check out what dominant is. Only need one capital letter to be expressed. Well, I don't see any capital letters here for little a, little a. So let's look at recessive. Recessive, meaning lowercase, need both to be lowercase in order to be expressed. So we have little a. So they're both present, they're both lowercase. So that is going to be recessive. Again, we want to use a different color. Okay. For number 3, this time we have an uppercase and a lowercase. So is it dominant or is it recessive? So we have to decide either one. Even though they both have an uppercase and a lowercase, right? We need to see which one it is. So I'm gonna go back to my notes so that I have over here on the side. And if I look at my notes, excuse me, I see that dominant. Again, in my notes, I say only need one capital letter to be expressed, meaning I only need one to see it. So here I have at least one capital letter. So because I have at least one capital letter, regardless if the other one is lowercase, that is going to be a dominant allele. And again, we want to do a different color. All right. Okay, So that's dominant and recessive, determining which is dominant and recessive. And really you're just looking at it if it's an uppercase or lowercase. Okay. Alrighty. Now, let's look at the next sections where we're having these words homozygous dominant and homozygous recessive and heterozygous. Okay. All right. So let's look at this bullet right here. So we have uppercase, so when we have two uppercase alleles, and again, just a friendly reminder, alleles are the letters. When we're talking about alleles, we're talking about the letters, okay? So homozygous, that word homozygous, right? All that word means is same, okay? Same, that's it. And it's also here stated in the notes, okay? So same. And we know that dominant, that is an uppercase letter, okay? So an example of these two combined, an example of homozygous dominant is going to be, and we're going to use our A's as examples, all right? A, capital A, capital A. They're both the same, right? They're both uppercase, okay? So if I have, again, it says it here, two uppercase. All right, for, again, homozygous just means the same. And we know that recessive is going to be the lowercase letter, okay? So an example of homozygous recessive is going to be little a, little a. And again, notice how it's right here in the notes, okay? So when it says two lowercase alleles, remember alleles is just the letters. The alleles is the letters, okay? And these letters, the letters represent the traits we're talking about. All right? It might sound a little confusing, but again, it shouldn't be that confusing if you have been reading the critical, if you did the critical reading prior to this assignment. One sec. All right, sorry. Okay. Right. Once again, the alleles are the letters that we are talking about. And again, the letters represent the traits we're talking about, whether we're talking about long hair, dimples, tall, short, etc. Alrighty, and then finally, we have heterozygous. Okay, so I'm gonna make this a little bigger. Move this. Okay, the word heterozygous, that just means different. Now, even though they're both letter A, they are different types of letter A. We have an uppercase and a lowercase a. Again, they're both A's, however, they're different types of A's. They're different types of letters. So, different, meaning we have both a. So, heterozygous is going to be both uppercase. Here, let's rephrase that. So, one uppercase and one lowercase. And to be more specific, to be more using our scientific words, meaning it is one dominant allele and one recessive allele. Okay? All right. Now that we have that information, we can go ahead and move on to section C and D. Okay? So identify whether the gene is homozygous or recessive. We don't need to talk about homozygous dominant or homozygous recessive. We're just asking, is it homozygous or is it heterozygous? So for number 1, right, I see that they are both the same type of H. So we have a capital H and a capital H. So I know for sure that my answer then is going to be homozygous. You don't have to spell out the whole word. You could just put HO for homozygous, okay? Now, for number 2, I'm not going to go over that. It should be pretty self-explanatory. For number 3, I see a capital letter and a lowercase letter, meaning I see a dominant allele and a recessive allele. So I know for sure that those are not the same type of Ys. They're both different. So I know that that is heterozygous, or HE. And again, you do not have to type in the whole word. All right, section D. Identify whether the gene is homozygous dominant, heterozygous dominant, or homozygous recessive. All right, so again, we just look right here at our notes that we have right here on the side, okay? If we have uppercase, they're both the same, so we know right off the gate that this is going to be homozygous. Now, what type of homozygous? Well, again, which type of letters or alleles are we working with? I see that they are both uppercase, all right? Since they're both uppercase, I know uppercase means dominant. So there's going to be homozygous dominant. So HOD. And please, again, if you're doing this digitally, make sure that it is in blue. Or, a color that is different from black. A color that I can see, or your teacher can see, so we can grade it properly. All right. Now, if it's homozygous recessive, right, like this one right here, I see that there is both little l, little l. And so if they're both little l's, okay, both are the same. So homozygous, again, right off the gate, they are exactly the same type of letter. They're both lowercase. So I know for sure that it is going to be homozygous. And because that they're both lowercase l's, it's lowercase, I know it's recessive. So HOR, and again, we want to use a different color. And then finally, we have to talk about, well, what's a heterozygous example? Remember, if we look right here in our notes, we have different. So one uppercase and one lowercase. So one dominant and one recessive. And I know right off the gate, number 4, I have a capital T and a little t. I have a dominant T and a recessive T. So they are completely different. So it is heterozygous. And we say heterozygous dominant because why? If it's dominant, you only need one to show it. So that's why we call it heterozygous dominant. All right. So that was for section C and D. Now, let's go ahead and talk about this word phenotype. So again, if you read the critical reading, this shouldn't be anything new. But remember, a phenotype, that is a trait we see. Okay? Genotype is the code. code or allele for the trait. All right, example. We have, let's say we have GG, okay? And so this is the code. That's going to be the code. That's the genotype. All right. GG, excuse me. Right. Come on. No. Why? Now we don't want to work. Fantastic. Let's do this again. Sorry. Okay, GG. Okay. So phenotype is what we see. What we can see. All right. So in this case, identify which phenotype that they have. So it's either brown eyes or green eyes. So our phenotype options for this example, all right, it's either brown eyes or green eyes. Okay. Now, how are we going to determine this based off of just the letters? Remember, the letters are your alleles. And the alleles represent the genotype. And again, if you read the critical reading, this shouldn't be anything new. Okay, so what are our genotype options? All right, it's either going to be BB, which we see. We also see capital B, little b, and we also see little b, little b. All right, so far so good. Now, how do I determine? Sorry, my shower is pretty loud. All right, so we have either capital B, capital B, capital B, little b, or little b, little b. Okay, so we need to determine which is which. So let's read carefully what it is saying. It says that brown eyes are dominant. So if brown eyes are dominant, right, that means that it's going to be an uppercase letter for brown eyes, okay? So what is our uppercase letter? Our uppercase is B, and it's dominant. And so, again, dominant is going to be brown eyes. For recessive, it's going to be green eyes, all right? So even though it doesn't say it right here that green eyes are recessive, we know that it's recessive because here it says brown eyes are dominant, okay? So now that we have all this information and we already practiced uppercase, lowercase, meaning uppercase is dominant, lowercase is recessive, we can go ahead and now answer this. So capital B is, they're both dominant, and so if it's dominant, they're going to have brown eyes. All right? Again, we want to make sure we are using a different color. All right. For capital B, little b, I automatically see a capital letter. Capital letter is dominant, and if it's dominant, they have brown eyes. Again, I want to do that in a different color. Again, you're only doing this in a different color if you are doing this digitally. And lastly, we have little b, little b. Remember, in order to see recessive, they both have to be lowercase. And so we see that they are both lowercase b's, meaning it's recessive, meaning that they're going to have green eyes. Again, in a different color. All right. I've gone over the notes. I've gone over how to do each section. The rest is up to you, and good luck. Bye, guys.